want to talk about the by-elections that recently happened and how they relate to the 2027 general polls. Today we do have the National Coordinator Elections Observation Group, that is ELOG. He was here a couple of weeks ago. Was it a few weeks ago or a few days ago? Mr. Mulle Musau, just before the by-elections. Mr. Musau, welcome to Radio Generation once again.
Asante sana.
Yeah, first of all, before we go any further, I know you've not had a chance to look at the reports, but do you think at the very least inflation has really gone up compared to perhaps 2-3 years ago? Unemployment, from where you sit, how is the situation as far as unemployment is concerned, and perhaps even the levels of inflation that we're experiencing in the country?
Well, I'll not be able to speak with a lot of authority on this because I like getting information.
Sure.
I like using data. But I think over the last, since was it 2 years ago, inflation was actually reducing. Now that suddenly it is spiking up would be very interesting to be able to find out exactly where what those factors are.
Right.
The fact remains that we do have some hard times. I mean, when you look at the general environment, even the rains that people have been expecting are not doing as well as they did. We know cost of living has been a thorny issue since 2, 3, 4 years ago. But I have no reliable data that can be able to speak to the fact that we are spiking up in terms of inflation now once again. Because actually, the last information we were getting, I think 2 years ago, was that it was starting to come down.
Yes, actually the president said it moved from 9% to 4.5%, and according to Oxfam, they actually agree with that figure. They're saying it's at 4.5% as far as November is concerned. So at least on that particular point, they agree that inflation has gone down. But they also say that this is the number of Kenyans who have fallen into extreme poverty since 2015. 7 million Kenyans who are wallowing in poverty.
Very, very interesting numbers. But I think one of the things that you can be able to say with some level of authority is the fact that the Kenyans feel the weight. If you deal with this from a citizen point of view, I think there's a lot of weight when it comes to the cost of living. I mean, there will be what 1,000 shillings was able to buy a few years ago is not what can be able to buy now. So you can see there is an impact in that particular regard. And I do agree with the fact that I think the wealthy are getting much more wealthier. That has always been the case, and I don't think it has reduced over the last 5-6 years. I think that is something that we still need to keep on looking at, because how we convert natural resources or our national wealth to benefit those at the bottom is still something that the governments which have been coming in place are still grappling with. They have not gotten it right. That bottom-up approach, I don't know whether it is really yet to work the way Kenyans would expect it to. But I hear you go to have the people who are producing this data tomorrow, so perhaps they can explain some more.
Yes, indeed, they will be here tomorrow. Hopefully, then we shall have that conversation in depth. Right now, though, let's just talk about the by-elections. You saw what happened on Friday when we had, was it Friday or Thursday? 27th. It was Thursday, Thursday. When we held different by-elections, 24 positions across the country. What do you make of what happened?
First, there were 22 because 2 of them went on unopposed. Although I've always had a problem with the issue of unopposed because it can be a conspiracy. I always feel that the people who go who have elections which are not where there is no contestation, they get a raw deal because they don't get to choose. Somebody could decide in a boardroom who becomes the candidate. And one of the things I've always been thinking privately is that we need to have a small referendum in those electoral areas where people determine whether they want that person or not. They can just say it's one person, but they can say, well, if you don't pass a certain threshold of votes, it's like collecting signatures, then you don't pass muster for being their representative.
Then how would that area be represented at the end of the day if the people have rejected the only person who's offered themselves to lead, and no one else wants to stand or rather contest for that particular seat? So wabaki bila MCA.
I don't think in a democratic country you would find that nobody wants to run, really. It's a conspiracy. Usually most of this is an elite conspiracy. People who sit somewhere and agree. But if for instance, if you're offered a second opportunity and that person still is the one who is willing to run, then so
It's
be
okay.
it for those people, because it means they also don't want to participate in the leadership.
We've had situations in this country where people have been abducted.
Exactly.
Just prior to a nomination, people are abducted, so they actually can't present themselves for the nomination.
Exactly.
So somebody goes in unopposed.
If you remember Kanu,
Paul, you've never come across this.
no, the politics.
City, you've lived in interesting times.
No, it's not just interesting times. I don't
Yeah.
think, if you mean interesting times in terms of referring to a longer period,
A
I think it
different-
is happening now.
Even now.
Yes. These things, you know what it takes for you to be able to be cleared to become a candidate.
Okay.
You will need, there are certain things you need to do. Among them, if you're going to stand with a political party, is that you'll need to go and get a certificate.
You'll be physically present. You can't
need
send
to
an
be
agent.
physically present there.
Yes, yes.
So if somebody does something just to delay you from that happening, then you're not going to present yourself, and therefore you'll be taken out. And usually, if you have ever checked the political parties, and when they hold their nominations, they hold on the last possible day.
Yes.
So that and usually that is also to check with each other, check on each other, because they know if this person, if we eliminate this person now, he has the opportunity to run to another party, to party B. So
Okay.
what they do, they nearly all of them hold their nominations around the same times on the last possible hour, so that you don't run anywhere.
Is there a way we can have that changed in law? Such, of course, I'm sure there is a way.
Yes.
Such that even if the last day, say today, December 1st, we are allowed until Friday 5th to confirm all these things, and perhaps even
They actually have
do a jig of sorts.
Actually, they usually have a timeline. They are given a timeline up to when they should have finished their nominations. They choose to do it on the last possible day. It's not that there is no debt, but it also does not mean that there is no option. This country allows for independent candidates, so you can run as an independent. You don't have to go to a political party. But the question, of course, becomes if you're in an area where the party is dominant, then you have to tea mwelekeo wa chama. So if you don't follow with the party, then you become an independent. Chances are you're going to be beaten by the other side. But those are only 2 elections. There were 22 others. And in the 22 others, we had observers on the ground. There are two sides. There are 2 sides of the coin as far as these elections is concerned. First, in terms of whether was it a credible, free and fair elections, we don't think so.
Across all the 22,
we don't think so.
Actually, all the 24.
These elections did not come anything close to being credible elections. There were things you could be able to tick and say this went well, especially some of the technical aspects of running the elections, where ABC is concerned. Kwenye kituo, did people come in? Were they identified? Were the kilns working? Were there was a counting done in a good way? Were voters allowed the space to be able to do it? Yes, within the polling station. But if you look at this election in terms of what an election should be, an election is supposed to be held in a conducive environment.
Okay.
Violence
Is not conducive.
Of any kind is a first parameter that you'd want to use to see whether to assess whether this election is being held or can be trusted.
Okay.
Because the minute you visit violence or create violence across the country or across those electoral areas, you do a number of things. The first thing is that you create tensions. You create you stop people from participating effectively in their campaigns.
Yeah.
There are campaigns where people are supposed to go and listen. There are campaigns where a candidate is supposed to express their issues and sell their agenda to the people. So when you have violence, how do the candidates, how do the people who want to listen into these candidates
interact?
And you remember, I think it was in Kasipul, we even lost a number of people because of violence. So in violence, number one. Number two, the question of incumbency and abuse of incumbency. How many public officials did you see out there campaigning, from the deputy president all the way
The CSs.
to the CSs?
PSs.
Everybody, PSs. They were all in the field. They are not supposed to be. They are public servants.
Yeah.
They're not supposed to be participating in an election.
Even county executive members.
Exactly. They were everywhere. We could see them, and they were very blatant. Nobody was hiding. Nobody was hiding. Maybe the president alone is the only one who at least had behaved in a manner to suggest he was not there. But all the other, most of the other lower levels of the government were out there campaigning, and then voter bribery, how much money was exchanging hands. Remember, among the technical breaches that we were able to identify is the breach on secrecy of the vote, where people were taking photographs of their what they had marked in the ballot paper.
Yeah.
That would mean somebody has sent them and told them, if you need this money, or there must have been some inducement. You need to show us that you actually voted this side, otherwise we'll not give you this. So when we see such things in a by-election, and then we see this other guy is called the misbehavior by politicians, especially the so-called super agents.
Yeah.
People moving from one place. Do you know what it means for a village which is elected a member of parliament to see a very big people walking by, and these people don't walk alone. That's where the goons, as Orengo was calling, the goonification of these elections, that goons everywhere. Because those big people, those big players, don't walk alone. And because it's an election period and there are campaigns all over the country, they also need their own protection. I remember observing something in Ghana where the former President Jerry Rawlings used to walk around with a team of some very muscled young boys, and every time we asked him what are you doing with these people, he says, this is my keep fit session. I'm having a keep fit session. They have these morning jogs. So he says, I'm just doing an exercise, and in fact he starts, when the cameras come, he starts doing exercises. But we know what they are doing with them. I mean, these are basically boys who are supposed to be clearing the pathways.
Yeah.
These gangs fight each other. They visit violence on remote areas of the country. So it was in short, you can call it a sham election. And if this is the kind of preparation we're going to be having for 2027, then we're going to be in for a very rough ride. So our summary observation is that there were technical things that, in terms of running the show inside polling station.
Yes.
Although like I said, we have a number of issues: the secrecy, breaches of secrecy, unauthorized personnel. There were people very clearly without any accreditation inside a polling station. They were not allowed. They should not have been allowed to get to those places. So,
and that is where you fault the IEBC now.
Yes. So where the IEBC comes to fault is that they never managed the elections, and they never ensured that there was a conducive environment for that voting. But the police now come in, because it's not just the IEBC alone. IEBC will be in charge of the actual balloting process. Yes. But what is the police? What is the role of the police as far as this?
Keeping the peace.
Keeping the peace. So you need to ensure you can't have gangs who are carrying rungus, and everybody can see them passing by. They are fighting, running battles just around the polling station. How do people even come to vote? Apart from Mbeere North, which registered 61% in terms of voter turnout, everybody else was nearly below 40%. Which is a bad showing in terms of ensuring that people have freedom to be able to participate in an electoral process, to choose their own leader. So where you have 30%, I think it is Unguja, if I'm not wrong, which had 24% turnout. So 24% of the total voters decide who the member of parliament is going to be for a constituency. I don't think that augurs very well. That is not mandate.
Why do you think that is so, specifically in Ugunja?
I think it's basically the first there have always been very low opinions or low interest by people generally for by-elections. There's this political fatigue that people get always,
but we vote once every 5 years.
Yes, but we are always in a campaign mode. I've said this a number of times. This country is always in a campaign mode from the day we lose an election.
From the day we
complete that petition process, and it is called hot air or whatever else is called. The next day we go back to the streets.
Campaign mode, yeah.
Campaign mode. And everybody's campaigning, and people get fatigued. And I remember earlier you were talking about the economy. There are far more greater issues that people want to deal with in this country than just politicking all the time. So generally, there's always a poor interest by elections.
Yes.
People don't give it a lot of attention. But where you create tensions, and you think, I think within the Chama ODM, there have been a lot of tensions. And you can see there's been a lot of internal rivalries.
Yes.
So again, when you infuse those kind of tensions in an area, because you would expect ODM, those are ODM zones, Ugunja, Kasipul, Kabondo, you would expect there would be much more calm, organized, clear, but that was not the case. It was far from it. So
there's something I want to ask you in regards to the violence perhaps we saw. It's like, for a fact it's going to rain. You can see the clouds.
Yes.
Really mvua mawingu. So you need to prepare yourself, carry a jacket, carry an umbrella, wear some gumboots, so that when it rains, you are well prepared. But it looks like the IBC, they know indeed it's going to rain, but they don't prepare in any way whatsoever. So for example, let me just speak on the issue of voter bribery, whether we are blaming the IBC or the police. The organs charged with ensuring that process is credible, free and fair, they know we shall have politicians, because this is the more or less the hallmark of Kenyan politics and voting. We bribe people. So this is going to happen, but for some strange reason you just don't.
How do you distinguish between inducing and bribing?
What do you mean inducing?
And treating.
Yes.
What do you mean differentiate?
Because we are saying that voters were bribed. And I'm saying the process of somebody giving and somebody receiving money is what we're referring to here. And I'm asking, at what point is it inducement and at what point is it bribery?
It is bribery.
Because one is an economic activity, the other one is a criminal activity. Which one?
If you, the politician, or the people that you send are not there to bribe me as a voter, because I'm clearly already either I'm on the line heading to vote, or maybe I'm even in my house, because I understand some people even picked from their houses and told kujeni tutawapeleka, you just make sure you vote, chicken, whatever you'll be given. If you do not come to me, then at no point will I interact with you and no money will exchange hands. But you left your home knowing very well you're coming to Radio Generation to bribe movies so that he can vote for me. So that one is bribery. I don't see any difference there.
Yeah, because what we need to look at in this part of this action, for me, it is a question of how does that influence. The word here, I think the word that we need to be employing in this is influence. In terms
choice
of,
that
does it persuade somebody to be able to make a decision? And remember, why oathing is wrong or is an offense is because of its power to influence, its power to coerce you to do or to make a decision that you would not have made had that oath not been taken or had that money not been given. So that is the angle. Of course, it's not as easy, and I know where City is driving at, because I don't think it's a very easy thing to be able to make a
bribe meant to induce.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying.
Yes.
At the end of the day, it persuades somebody to make a certain decision, which may not be the decision that they would have made had that inducement not come through. But I think the question is, there's an Africanized. I don't know whether there's an Africanization, but there's a way we have naturalized the act of receiving and giving.
Yes.
Even in processes where we may not need to. Even when this thing of when people are saying, for instance, when somebody says, "I got your son a job, let ambuzi," something like that.
Yes.
That can be taken very, very positively, but it can also be taken very negatively at the same time. So I think when it comes to elections, now the question for our question becomes: you go to a village, or a politician comes to a village and pours money to influence a certain outcome. That becomes unfair. Basically, just unfair. I don't think those villagers are complaining about the money.
Complaining?
They're not complaining.
Christmas came early.
Yeah, exactly. I don't think they are complaining in that regard, and they wouldn't even go to court to go and say, or somebody goes to court and says, people are being bribed. The only person who's going to go to court, if there was somebody to say, is a person who did not have the money to give out. And that is where an even playing ground now comes in. Because if somebody is going to become, remember Livondo and the guy was raining money from helicopters. If somebody is going to be doing that, in your environment, and that's the person you're competing with, is going to be unfair.
Very
and
unfair.
that is now where what needs to be reined in. It was very blatant, I think, in these by-elections. I think money had really been poured, as usually term it, and there were outcomes which could have been procured through that inducement. And those are the issues I think we need to look at, because if it is not reined in, and how is it supposed to be reined in for IBC and all the other actors to really think through it. The biggest problem for me, and I think we've discussed with City over the years, is a culture of bad manners that our politicians have, because they don't even need to do those things. Somebody can sell their good ideas to the people, but they don't. For them, these political actors, the only way they think Kenyans understand is having some kind of becoming a Mr. Moneybag, who will walk in the village and knowing that the people have problems and they are waiting for Christmas. Then they start handing over, giving handouts. So I think in that regard, it creates an uneven, because the idea of behind an election is to create an even playing field where everybody, whoever wants to become a councillor or an MCA, or you want to become a member of parliament, everybody has access, has the opportunity to talk with the people, to try to sell sera zake. But if you don't do that, or you don't have that opportunity, then it's a skewed environment and it's a skewed space.
Now, perhaps ABC, I don't know if this is whether it's within their mandate, but I'm sure if something happens within the polling station, they have the right to even say, look, election ya Kasipuleo haijaenda sawa sawa, even specifically in this polling station. So we might end up nullifying these results. Are they able to do that?
Who?
IEBC.
IBC has the power to call off an election.
Okay.
Remember, let me take you back. Presidents are there. 2017. Remember the second election. What are we calling it? The fresh presidential election.
Yes, the runoff. If I call it.
Yeah, it was not a runoff, but
it was a runoff.
They nullified the first one.
Right.
In the second one, there were 4 constituencies or 5 which never participated in the vote, which were in Nyanza. And what was the reason for IBC? They said there was no conducive environment to be able to hold elections, because I remember even IBC went to, I think it was Homa Bay.
Yes.
In Homa Bay, where quite a number of the stations of IBC were even burnt down. So they couldn't go there. That's a situation where you can say the election is not conducive in this area. We either defer, in fact the word they used is they deferred that election. There's somebody who was arguing that IBC should have been taken to court, because after that deferring, they still never
went back to have the election.
I mean, immediately before the election, the presidential election, that was all that. So those constituencies never voted, basically. And it was overtaken by time, because it was an election of a president. Okay. So you can defer, but then when do they vote? At what point? Because once you vote, then you already made a decision for them. So the IBC had the powers. The police have the powers to be able to say, well, based on our security reports, either we are going to be this, we can control, I can ensure that it's a secure elections, and if they feel for one reason or another that violence or the aspect of violence is one which may not be mitigated very easily, they can advise the commission to be able to just call or defer the election until such a time that it is safe. It is safe to be, because we don't need to. There is no election which should make sense if one person can die. Or one person can be harmed in any way. That election does not make sense to that country. Why would we have an election where people have to suffer for it?
What we are saying is that right now we are expecting the IEBC in a sensible environment. We expect the IEBC to say, by the way, what happened on Thursday, we do not agree with it, and henceforth
IBC cannot do that now. After it's a factor. Can't happen.
They already declared winners.
They declared winners. Now the only thing which can overturn that is a court. So somebody has to go to court. Okay. Somebody has to move.
But on that day, the IBC had the power to say, by the way, what we've witnessed today is a sham.
They can call it off. Yeah. They are the ones handling the election. They can just say, we don't think this election is fair. We don't think there's so much commotion. For instance, if there was somebody invaded some of those tallying centers and there was violence, do you think they would have declared any result? Although, unless they can be able to rehabilitate the polling station results, or they have a separate saving of those results. If you don't have them, and somebody comes up and burns the entire place down, how do you declare any result in that? So you'd have to say we're going to call for another election. We're going to prepare another election. So there will be circumstances before and during that can lead to a deferment of that election. But once the declarations are made, now the onus now moves to any other party.
But as far as electoral malpractice are concerned in this country, one could say that there has been a significant reduction, because we've had, if you look at our history, ballot boxes literally physically disappearing, being found floating on rivers physically. Electricity at a tallying center going off, shots fired into the air, people run off. When they come back, they're more ballot boxes than they were previously. I mean, we've had, and in the times when the returning officer was the district commissioner, and from the various polling stations which were in the schools, you had to ferry the ballot boxes to this center on a Land Rover. Some ballot boxes simply didn't get to that tallying center. What I'm trying to say is, when you have a 60+% turnout for a certain constituency, it tells you that what you are saying is negative. The citizens don't agree with you, because if they agreed with you, they would not have turned up. Now, you're talking about people being induced. The process of electioneering is a process of inducement. Unless we have clear laws that determine what a bribery is and what isn't, it determines what can be spent and what can't. And the people who determine it are these people who present themselves for election. They are not going to make a ruling that works against them. So the only people who can fight against bribery are the people who receive it. But from what I observe, they actually like the idea of being bribed. They don't have a problem with it. The moment you have a citizenry whose very ethos has accepted the process of bribery and have accepted that they can be bribed, the next phase is to demand to be bribed. And we are actually there. It's not that we're not there. There are places where you cannot present yourself as a candidate for any position. People ask you, and the term you use, ile amacho, iko. Now,
True.
That is the reality of our politics. So when people say that wrongs were committed, what are the wrongs? The citizenry have embraced bribery. They have accepted it as a way by which we conduct our elections. We have accepted it. There's no story about it. There's no pretending that we haven't. We have. In fact, if anything, we now demand more. So, as for violence, it's a growth industry. It is something that we see. How do you explain the number of pro boxes that were seen in Kasipul? How do you explain 17 young men with crude weapons being arrested? It's a growth. I mean, it's not as though these people walk around with rungus and machetes every day, but for that specific purpose, they were paid and they were told, this is what you need to do. So it's a job that they were given. Okay? In Malava, the same. If you look at, they burnt a vehicle, isn't it? But they didn't just burn it. Reports are there are 2 briefcases were removed from that car before they burnt it. What does that tell you? The industry that we refer to as electioneering involves money. People have understood it involves money. There are those who will look for that money before it's distributed to steal it. Yes. There are those who will wait and present themselves as the people who can now distribute this money effectively. We've had election periods where after the election period, people are looked for in their houses and some were killed. Why? Because it is said they're the ones who have been given money to distribute and they did not distribute. So people went for their money. The electoral process in Kenya cannot change if we do not look at it with the honesty it deserves. We like being bribed. We expect our politicians to bribe us. We also expect our politicians to do as little as possible. That is the reason why we expect them to give us our money in advance, so that even when they do not bring any development, because we assume they bring development, it is okay. We wait for the next election when we can now raise the stakes and they can give us more money. That, in my opinion, is the reality of our politics. Forget these highbrow values that we keep talking about. They're not even aspirational. People simply do not think that way. So if we're talking about change, the question is, what exactly do we need to change? If there is a law that is specific, that's a reference point. And you can say these guys are breaking the law because this is what it states. We banned Harambes. it was outlawed. How did Harambes come back in full force?
The person who outlawed it is the one who's doing it.
My point, exactly. That is the nature of our politics. There's a do or die attitude that we have, and it's presented by us, the media, because we weaponize this process. All these 24 elections, 20 some, is it 24? Yes, 24, 22 elections that were taking place, we focused on 2.5. Bere, Malava, Kasipuli is the half. And that one people assumed is a foregone conclusion. And yet, we have a situation where a deputy governor of that particular county was at odds with the governor. But there's a history behind it. What am I trying to say? The political situation in this country, when you look at it, and then you argue and talk about the ramifications or the implications of this with 2027, that's a media creation. That is my view. We weaponize this thing and just push this agenda of Rigathi Gachagua and Ruto. We just kept pushing that agenda. We did not even pause and say, why are these people not talking about what they're going to do for the people? Why? The agenda setting and the agenda, we fueled this particular discussion that we're now having that revolves around supposedly Gachagua and Ruto. And the citizen who votes is not in that conversation at all.
But you see, if we look at that issue of agenda setting, two people are responsible for that particular agenda. Number one, of course, the media, and number two, the politicians. If we look at the politicians, there's literally nothing else they're giving. Nothing. If you go and talk to these particular folks, those are the only things those are the only two people they're referring to. And specifically in this period of the by-election, perhaps things will change starting today going forward. I don't know. We are yet to see.
Change from one to one.
The conversation.
Somebody was saying that if you go to a country and you find that the politicians are the ones who are no more known, I mean, people can easily mention the name of a politician more readily than a businessman, a sportsman, a doctor, or then that's just a politicized country. And City has a point when he says there are things we have naturalized in our country. But I also agree on the question of the agenda and how the agendas are being set. Because, for instance, nobody, even when people go and meet these politicians, nobody talks to them about exactly what they have in store for the people. Nobody goes and says, the way that Oxfam, yes, data, that it has given some data. Nobody goes and says, this is Malava constituency. It has 2 million people. These are the number of hospitals. These are the number of facilities which have been created, schools which have been created for the people. This is the poverty index for this particular day. What are you planning? In the 1.5 years you're going to be a member of parliament. What is your agenda as far as this is concerned? Nobody ever asks these people these questions. What we are thinking about is how Natembea is going to fight with this other person.
The Tawe movement.
How the Tawe movement is going to be. Those are the narratives. We create these narratives, and those narratives become the most important issue. Is if Gachagua is going to lose Mbeere North, or Kindiki is going to lose Mbeere North, what does that imply? What if out ODM, the independent candidates, becomes the member? What does that imply? That the younger Turks are the ones who are taking over, or the party is going to break up? The narrative is never the agenda that there are people, for instance, Banisa, who have nearly stayed for 2 years without a member of parliament, or Magarini, where people have suffered. The finance bills and other bills were being passed without their participation. That is not a question. That is not an issue that we follow up. So I think there's a big conversation that we need to have in terms of the agenda, how we perceive it, how we engage these politicians, and how we need to question the politician. For me, one of the things which was, I was saying this somewhere else. Have you ever realized that all politicians have black hair, even the ones who are 80 years?
It's important.
I know. But that's the importance. I mean, they don't look like City here.
Black hair, once become a politician, it just grows on its own.
There are those who are older than City. But their hair is blacker than mine.
Yeah, exactly. because they have to keep giving this false image. They use force. Yes, it's a good classification of the kind of characters that we have in our leadership.
Can I be honest about one thing? Because we've hosted both Gava and opposition here. When you host government officials, they will tell you, they will give you facts about what is happening in this area in terms of productivity, in terms of what the citizenry are experiencing, in terms of, even matters to do with inflation, in development. Then they'll talk. But when you host someone who wears the cap of a politician, whether government or otherwise, my friend, there is nothing else they'll tell you. They'll tell you the government is trying to deliver, but Gachagua is doing this, and then you're like, okay. Then Kalonzo is doing, and then you're like, then you host another one from a different, but still in the opposition, a different party. Then they'll tell you, but you see also our friends in the opposition. So you find that hakuna kitu ya maana watasema. Up until the point whereby you actually host someone in Gava. And then now the other problem is when you host someone in Gava, the problem is again peeling back the mask on some of the things that they're saying, because when you get deeper and deeper insight into some of those conversations, it's either they do not want to answer you, or they tell you they're not in a position to give you that particular data at that particular time, or they tell you that one you would need to wait until a certain time for you to get that information. So to answer your question on this whole agenda setting, it is the politicians, unfortunately, who are setting agendas. And when you ask them clearly, what are you as Musau planning to do for your people in Malava County, for example? They'll tell you, once I get into government, first of all is to ensure that we undo what was done by the previous government. Sasa unacheki, it is just impossible to get straight answers from this.
Paul, if we do not bring forth into the public these agendas that are set by politicians, how will people know? That's what I'm saying. We weaponize the agenda.
Yeah.
How can an entire conversation about 24 elections be about just 2.5 constituencies? How? Is it that those people don't matter? And there was one for a senator. It's as though some of these, you and I were looking at these places the other day, isn't it?
North.
Were we not? And you're saying, wait a moment, but there's this place. Did you hear of us in the media saying, for instance, Magarini is known to be an ODM stronghold. Many of these people who are contending at some times or the other were in ODM. But because they didn't win the nomination, blah, blah, blah. Meaning, inform people about what is happening there. So when they look at the elections, they understand it. Let's take a popular place like Mbere. All right? There are two people now who are contending. One had been an MP in that particular area. He was even the AG. Okay? He has a candidate and he has a party. It's called DP. There's other fellow who was, meaning, did you hear us telling the stories of these people so that when you're looking at the elections, you are actually approaching it as somebody who's reading about it from informed position? No, we were not. You look at Kasipul. Were you being told that this gentleman called Magwanga, who is the deputy, had actually been the person who wanted to be governor, and is a very popular politician? He had been a multiple MP, very popular fellow, and he represents, he seems to, people who perhaps don't agree with certain people within ODM. Just the little differences that people have. And so when you look at the candidates who are being presented, what they present is this. Do you hear that story? No. So what I'm saying is this. We need to report what politicians are saying, yes, but we have a duty to inform the public a little more. And
the biggest problem actually we've been having since independence for me has always been public education. We have not informed people enough. If I am asked, every time I'm asked, what do you think we need to do in this country? I always say the biggest deficit is education, the information to the people, information that empowers. People become enabled when they have information. And where we have seen, when Gen Z are part of the public, isn't it?
Yes, they are.
When they sat down and decided to, try to understand the finance bill, understand the Katiba, understand so many other things, you've seen how powerful they became. And up to today, we still have a conversation about them.
Yes.
And that conversation continues. And I'm very sure the politicians will be asking themselves what will be the Gen Z, because the Gen Z's impact was not in these by-elections. They were not part of the register anyway. I think the most excited young people are the ones in the last 2 years who gotten themselves to the streets. Now they would want to participate politically, but they were not in the register because they were not being the register was not updated in that particular time. So maybe their impact is coming in 2027. But there will be politicians, and you hear them, all of them. When Kalonzo speaks up, he'll be saying, "I'm with the Gen Z." Gachagua will say, "I'm with the Gen Z."
Maraga alisema from day one.
So there are those people that have already identified with this constituency because they know it can be a force and it has a potency of being a game changer. If that will happen, we are yet to see. But the issue here for me is, as City is saying, we have failed to inform the people and give them data and information that allows them to make informed decisions, to become active. And that's why some people, especially the civil society, keep talking about political education. Because political education allows you to understand how to interact with the chief, how to interact with your member of our county assembly, how to interact with the elders, how to mobilize yourselves on an issue and advocate for it. So that is an agency that the people do not have, and many of them don't have. And a lot of the time is the sensational stories which cut the deal. If you go to my village, I think the issue if I find any baraza of people in the market discussing these elections, Gachagua aliangushwa huku, hata hakuna kitu najua, na pande ile nyingine ule tawe, tawe wezani, there'll be, Ruto has ideas, that is a conversation in those, if you walk in the villages.
Yes.
And that they call it ubabe.
But why limiting the villages? People have those conversations in town.
No.
Same.
I'm very sure. I'm just trying to create the impact. In the towns, of course, it's very obvious. Yeah. But you go to the village where you would expect some level. They are far flung. They are in the fringe, in the fringes of the country. But these are the guys. That's the kind of conversation. Yeah. It's about. And I think there's this MP who said people. Is it a MP? A politician in these elections said, "Are people like seeing somebody who has bravado?" Those are the selling points. So the one who comes out boasting, strong, who looks like he's wearing the best suit,
that is the best
driving
leader.
The best car, and the one who can fall a giant is an impressive person. But nobody's asking for what. Why do we have the member of parliament? How are they going to interact with our SHA business? How are they going to interact with our school business?
Yes.
That interactivity between the public and this system, nobody wants to breach it. And that is where the issue is for me.
So now, in terms of whose responsibility it is to bring that out, apart from the media, who else does that responsibility fall on?
One of the things, when it comes to elections, I have talked to IBC directly, and I've said, I've told the chair, and even the previous two chairs, I had a conversation with them. I say, if you cannot become the People's Commission, then you have no business being an independent agency for the people. For me, the agency of IBC, and I know it's there are all these conversations about it being governmental, but you can stake yourself out and become a People's Commission. And one of the things I've even said a number of times is that how many times we see this commission in a meeting somewhere, in a meeting with Njuri Njeke, or in a meeting with the Kaya elders, or in a meeting with Chama women somewhere, because they need to come off from the ivory tower and start having conversations with the people, even just get to understand. Part of the education is just understand what the people are doing, these narratives that we are talking about. If you walk there, and that is just part of it in terms of elections, get out there. If all these agencies, each of them starts moving towards the people. Political parties are another agency which is very strong. But of course, because of their vested interest, they will not really tell the story as it's supposed to be told. So it's supposed to be the public agencies, the government has the ultimate responsibility, but so long as it takes the position of a political government, then it will be prejudiced. But if it was to decide to talk to the people about what they need to do, and they have public officers in the lowest levels who can be able to educate and work with the people, that would be the best agency.
Perhaps then some of that responsibility then also falls on ORPP. Register of Political Parties.
Although their major mandate is basically much more to do with the dealing with the political parties themselves, the institutions. Their mandate doesn't really
necessarily
extend to the people.
Okay.
Yeah, it's much more of the management of those institutions. They can only ask questions like, have you included people? Does your
But they would only
constitution...
need to ask the parties, not the people.
Yes, because you see, for instance, a very good example is where there is a requirement that the party must be at least have offices in more than half
24 counties
of the counties. See, that is an aspirational number. I don't think our RPP has gone on to ask, okay, we know it's just 24, but you are a national party. Why are you not in the 47? And what kind of programs do you have even inside those offices? I don't think they go to that extent.
Okay.
But there is a need. I mean, it is assumed because you're a political party, and a political party requires members. You know, I was once in the Social Democratic Party.
Okay.
And under the leadership of Nyong'o, Orengo, and others. One of the things that we used to do was to go to villages and try to talk to people about the social democratic agenda. And they would send us, Orengo would send us to a village and tell us, you need to go and hold jembe with a farmer. You know, actually it was Dr. Apollo Njonjo. He was the one who was very clear-minded about how to engage people.
Yes.
You take us deep into Limuru, into the villages, and you would tell you, I want you to go with a djembe.
Yes.
Because you'll find those guys inside the farm.
Yeah.
And you go there, you're young people.
Yeah.
Lima now, then to have a talk. You know, that was an engagement. That's an outreach. So this outreach by political parties, which does not happen now, is a gap. Outreach by IABC does not happen. It's a gap. The government, civil society attempts, but a lot of the times the civil society will be accused of being elitist, that they're always at the top level only. Although there are quite a number of programs, the other sectors, agriculture, medicine, and all other things, which sometimes they take to the people. I mean, you'll find some of the private hospitals by civil society actors, like in, what do you call it? South Sea. This international organization. Why am I forgetting it? Red Cross, sorry.
Yes, I was going to ask, what do they do?
ICRC.
Red Cross, yes. Utapata wako, you know, there are places. You remember when we were having was it hunger in the north, and some people say the only government which is known here is the Red Cross.
When we had Sisi for Sisi,
exactly,
and we collected over 1 billion.
Exactly. So you see, those are civil society actors. They have those outreach programs, but they can't do much on their own. I mean, they also have where the money comes with vested interests. You know, who pays the piper? So again, there are always those questions about why are they doing this and for what reasons. But the government, the media, political parties, the independent agencies, if they had a persuasion to be on the people's side,
yes,
this agency would grow, in my view.
Yeah.
There's an agency that does what you're saying, but the nature of their business, they don't really have much of a choice. NCIC.
Yes.
They get to talk to people, get to talk to communities, because it is within these communities that the conflict that they deal with are fermented.
Yes.
So they do a great deal of. And when you talk to them and you look at the information they give you, it's hands-on. They're not theorizing. They'll even tell you, this is what we saw here, this is what we spoke of, this is what we said to the people. But the thing that they constantly and consistently complain about is underfunding. Because for these agencies to actually do what they're supposed to do, actually they do need a certain amount of money. And if they don't have that funding, they will not be able to do this very thing that they're said to do. Because if, for instance, we ask the 2007-2008 conflict that we had, the internally displaced people that we had, and the issues that arose then, and then the Truth and Justice
Reconciliation Commission.
Yes, that was set up. The findings, the Waki Commission, all those things, the Waki Commission, all these things. The question is this. It's always posed as a question, but there's hardly an adequate response. If we look at the findings and implement them, because the findings came with an implementation discussion, would we be in a position to actually have a better country as a result of that? Because we haven't sought to implement whatever the findings were. In fact, the public doesn't actually know about the findings, because the time taken to actually broadcast and say, over this period of time, this is what we're going to tell you about the findings, that has also not been done. So it means that when we are actually witnessing the same problems that brought about that situation, and we haven't done what was recommended we do so that it doesn't happen again, then the likelihood of what we saw happening again is still potent.
You know, that brings to a very interesting point, because one of the things that the Gen Z, when you listen to them very clearly, they usually say, we don't need even to start anything new. And they keep saying, if you just implemented what you have already done, whether there was an investigation, do you have a report, get that report and follow the recommendations. If it was about land, it's about the conflicts, it's about the constitution, there are reports. There's a lot of good work which has been done in this country. I agree. City is spot on the NCIC. There are people who have invested a lot of energy and time on getting information on certain things, but that is never sees the light of day. Funding has been a perennial issue, even with IBC. They never get all the funds that they require. I know that's part of the handicap that they get, that does not allow them to be able to get to mashinani like they ought to do. But again, that's a story of us following up. Because that's also where media, civil society, and others can follow up and say there was this Truth and Reconciliation Commission. There is a report, and even begin unpacking some of the issues if they can be able to get their hands on that report, unpacking some of the issues that ought to have been undertaken. But also one of the other things that we also have to wonder about, in my view, is the question of the tenure of the 5-year tenure. I always say there's a disruption which is unnecessary. That we have a 5-year political tenure where the government sets office. It's supposed to have some policies that it's supposed to implement. It hopes it will get a second term so they can be able to complete, because if a 5-year cycle is still not enough to be able to implement. But we don't play mature politics. We don't play the kind of mature politics that would expect that if there are ideas which are started, we want to see their completion.
Yes.
So what we do is that we are first, when a government is elected, we start fighting it. There are those who will start fighting it because they want to be the ones in office.
Okay.
That becomes disruptive by itself. The government also, because it's not sure about whether it's going to come again, also starts having its own internal disruptions, because it also does not now focus on the long term, or does not even want to look back at what has been done by the previous leadership to continue, so to be able to complete. So everybody wants to come with their own idea of what they can do within 5 years. That truncated thinking, in my view, stops a lot of the pursuit of moving the country forward. We need to be looking at, if, for instance, I think somebody talked about, there was this conversation about Vision 2030. Was it a Kibaki agenda? What did Huru do about it? What is Ruto doing about it? Everybody seems maybe to have their own idea of what their development plan could look like. That is not a way to develop a country. A country has to have an idea of where it wants to go, and everybody must contribute towards it.
Where, as we perhaps come to a conclusion as far as this is concerned, so what are we saying then about 2027? What we saw on Thursday, does it reflect in any way what we expect in 2027?
This is what I've seen from my trends and as an observer. In 2021, we had some very serious by-elections in Matungu, in Hell's Gate. I remember there were quite a number of them. Serious violence was visited. In fact, the statement, when I was reading our statement from those elections, it was nearly a replica of the one that you are now writing, because it's about the same issues: voter bribery, violence, goons, a lot of bloodshed. But what happened in 2022? Did we see the same level? So I think there is this trend which now seems to be emerging, that by elections, since nobody pays a lot of attention to them, then everything goes. By the time we turn out to the main election, a lot of the and remember, these are only 22 electoral areas. In the national election, we have 1,881 electoral positions, including the presidency, and you'll want to have everybody spread all over. Those guys who have all the time to go and campaign in Bere and Malava will be fighting for their own lives somewhere. So I think because of the dispersal of effort across the country, I wouldn't expect the same level of violence. But what we need, especially from an IBC point of view, is that as a referee and as a manager of elections, they need to put their foot down.
Okay.
To ensure that if there is code of conduct by political parties, it might be adhered to. There was an attempt to fine Kasipul Kabondo aspirants. I mean, they were fined, but that was not enough. I think we need to start disqualifying. They need to start disqualifying candidates, disqualifying political parties.
Raise the stakes.
Yes, raise the stakes. Because if they don't do that, then chances are somebody will just decide, oh, if we did this in the by-elections, maybe we can do it even in the main election, which will be catastrophic. So in my view, I think IBC needs to stamp the authority on managing electoral processes in the country. And then all the other vitengos, vitengo hizo vingine, kitengo cha polisi, idara ya polisi, they have to up their game. This is a political, they know, yes, of course, politics, elections are political processes, but they need to play their role.
We're actually saying something with CT here. As the by-elections are going on, you know, when you see some of those CSAs walking into the polling station, and it's almost like
without badges even.
It's like they're on campaign mode. Well, some of them were voting, but you can see it's like they're almost in campaign mode. Wanasalimia wananchi. And I was like, Sasa, which cop here? Because they're working with cops, even uniformed ones.
Exactly.
No one is telling this Mheshimiwa anything. No one is arresting this Mheshimiwa. No one is even telling him, hey bro, can you just vote and bounce if you are voting? So that's the country we live in. Na hiyo idara umesema, hicho kitengo cha polisi umesema, perhaps we need to have a conversation with them.
Exactly.
Like, properly.
Exactly.
Shida yao ni saa zingine hata wakikuja kuketi mbele ya microphone kama hii wanakwambianga there are things we can't say because of national security reasons.
You say a very good point. Remember when Kaluma was saying that he lost his gun? Is it when a member of parliament says I've lost my gun in the scuffle? How many guns are inside that polling station? So even as a policeman, you're also wondering, how do I act? Yeah. These people walk around with their bodyguards. Some of them have guns.
Some of them are private.
Security guards.
Yes.
The members, these big people have guns, all of them. What do you do with these people? And we are in a tense environment.
Yeah.
So I think the way, and that's why the management for me comes in, police come in, the IBC comes. They have to sit with all these people and the political parties. And they have to rein in on them and tell them you cannot create this kind of environment. It becomes unmanageable.
Yes.
But I'm also saying, as my last point, if IBC feel they cannot be able to manage an electoral process because of the tensions which have been created, whether by others or by goons, but in a manner that they cannot be able to conduct free and fair elections,
yes,
they should defer that election.
Thank you.